Welcome to the Death and Disco podcast, where we explore how embracing death is the key to making the most out of life. And I'm not just talking about like your inevitable death, your mortality, but the inner deaths that we go through in life that are key to our transformation, our growth, evolution, and healing. And today I have an expert in the subject, Dr. Eric Russell. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Emily.
Yes. I'm going to tell our listeners a little bit about you. So, Eric is a psychologist, a plant medicine educator, and integration coach who helps purpose driven leaders and seekers reconnect to themselves through intentional work with psilocybin and microdosing. His work bridges the space where science meets soul, blending psychology, neuroscience, and trauma informed practices with spirituality and ceremonial wisdom. I love that so much, like grounded spirituality. And I totally feel that in your presence, in your energy. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So Eric and I met on our Egypt pilgrimage, which was over the winter solstice of 2025. Gosh, I can't believe it's been that long.
Mm.
And like everyone in the group, just completely hit it off. We had an amazing group of like conscious spiritual people, lots of different facilitators, astrologers, fashion designers, just a really eclectic group. And Eric and I've kept in touch with many people from our retreat, but I just agreed to help Eric promote his new Egypt pilgrimage that is coming up this December because I had such a life-changing experience and I fully trust Eric. And Eric, would you just share a little bit about the retreat that you have planned this December of 2026?
Sure, absolutely. So, Egypt is a soul land for me, and I've been to Egypt twice now, both on retreats. And the last retreat, of course, went with Emily, and it was life changing. Just the group that we had, the community that we built. I thought it was just such an amazing spiritual experience. And I was inspired by that retreat to create my own with my partner, who is actually very interested in Egypt as well, a expert nervous systems and relationship coach. And we're building the theme of the retreat all around how to build conscious partnership and build that conscious relationship with each other.
I love it so much. So, we're going to probably be weaving in bits and pieces of Egypt throughout our interview. I just have like a feeling. But today we really are diving into metaphorical death, the inner deaths that are necessary for us to grow and to evolve. And as a transformation coach, I know you are an expert on this subject matter. And so I wanted to first get into the alchemical process.
Mm.
And if you want to weave in Thoth here too, because when I was in Egypt, Eric and I did a reading together and I actually pulled Thoth. And I believe that like I'm here to weave in death medicine and help people go through these metaphorical deaths too. But I'd love to just hear about like what is alchemy to you and how does it show up for us in our growth journey, in transformation and in healing work?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just to put it simply, alchemy is the art of transformation. And it has its origins actually in ancient Egypt. So if you break down the word alchemy, you get chem, which is, goes into the word chemistry as well. But even before that, chem, Khem, actually comes from the Egyptian word kemet, which was actually like the black soil that you found on the Nile River. And people referred to chem as this kind of black soil, but it actually, in the alchemical process, you begin with what is called the black or the lead, which eventually transforms into the gold going through the entire alchemical process. But the actual root word of alchemy comes from ancient Egypt, and the words derived from that culture. And so many people think of alchemy as like an old man with a beard in a medieval like castle room, like playing with a bunch of chemicals and trying to turn lead into gold. But it actually has its original roots from ancient Egypt, and specifically with Thoth, how you referenced that Egyptian deity. He created the Emerald Tablets and was very much the leader and the professor of alchemy and the alchemical process, and was the god associated with wisdom, and also he could be associated with magic, but really the art of transformation, which is alchemy. And he was tasked with providing the people of Egypt that sacred knowledge through text, through writing, through the Emerald Tablets. And so it
Mm.
has its roots a great deal from the lands of Egypt.
Yeah, wow, that's so cool. And I love that. Just alchemy in its essence is just about like transformation, right? But we do think of the alchemical process of turning base metals into gold. And so we're speaking in metaphor here, but when it comes to actual transformation in our own personal lives, um, I want to just share a little bit about my story and then I want to hear about yours because I always say that I alchemized my husband's death, my pain into my purpose. But I think what often gets missed is we almost want to just go straight to like the purpose, or we want to go straight to the gold, right? In
Mm-hmm.
the alchemical process. But true alchemy actually does take inner death. Like my identity as a wife had to die. My identity even as a mother had to die. Um, there was the death of my relationship. Like so many micro invisible deaths that I had to go through in order for that like true alchemical process to occur. So, can you walk us through the alchemical process of transformation? Like when you're going through a deep transformation?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're referring to is actually two classes of alchemy. And there's the physical alchemy, which is referred to turning the lead into gold, right? But then there's also the mental and spiritual alchemy, which is what
Mm.
you're referring to, like turning pain into purpose, like transforming certain emotions. That is really referred to as spiritual alchemy. And it is a similar, like the analogy is like pretty simple, like it's a good analogy from transforming base metals like lead into gold because it has to go through multiple different steps in
Yes.
that process to get to the end result, which is gold. Similarly to how you take your pain, which could be thought of as lead, and then ultimately turning it into gold, which is the purpose, which
Yeah.
is like the enlightenment, the fulfillment, like all of those really high frequency spiritual concepts, right?
Yeah.
And so through the alchemical process, are actually seven different stages in alchemy. And each one takes a different amount of time depending on the stage. But the first stage is called calcination. And that is, and if we're referring to this as through the lens of spiritual alchemy, this is the time in our lives where we really just experience something unexpected, or something just takes us down somehow, or makes us really do some inner reflection or inner work that we really needed to do. And this is like in physical alchemy, it's literally incinerating the lead into soot ultimately. And then so that could be really taken and put into the solution, which is called dissolution. So dissolution is really the process in which we face our shadows and open ourselves up to our blind spots and things that we're not conscious of, and really have to integrate those and accept those and move through them. And this is actually one of the hardest parts for a lot of people to do in the alchemical process, because
Mm.
it's really deep shadow work. We have to really go to the depths and experience um, what we call like a death. And from the dissolution process becomes separation. And this is where we have to separate out what is not no longer serving us. And typically that is a death process. We have
Mm.
to shed the layers that are not serving us anymore. And therefore, really extract what is actually going to be serving us going forward. And that brings us to the stage of conjunction, which is merging the unconscious with the conscious. In other words, making us more conscious of what is going on within our psyche. And that's conjunction. It's literally the birth of consciousness, the birth of new awareness around our true selves. And
Yeah.
then that moves to the fifth stage of alchemy, which is fermentation. And fermentation is one of the most beautiful stages of alchemy because in physical alchemy, it's literally when the new solution is starting to um, come into new form. That's when the gold starts to appear a little bit, even in the chrysalis. When a caterpillar is transforming into a butterfly, it's when the goop starts like sprouting the wings in the chrysalis. It's like when
Wow.
seeing that new material starting to form within the cocoon or within the chrysalis. And this is the stage of fermentation. It's when you start seeing this new child forming out of the nothingness. And in that same process, the old material or the goop starts dying off. It's like
Wow.
dying off and the final death of that material of the old. So it's like the emergence of the new, the the, uh, what is the word I would use? The just like the ultimate dying off of the old material. And what's really cool about that is in fermentation, what you get is typically what is referred to as the peacock's tail, which
Mm.
is this really beautiful rainbow filament that appears on the material. And that happens when the old starts dying off from the new. And so, in what I've experienced actually in psychedelic experiences, is when we're in that fermentation stage, when we start to experience the new self emerging and we're that old starting to die off, I frequently see rainbows around me,
Wow. I love that.
like colors around me. And that mirrors the stage in physical alchemy where that rainbow filament appears on the material. And so it's like a really cool parallel between the physical side of alchemy and what we experience in the spiritual. And now, past fermentation, we enter into distillation, which is the sixth stage. Not quite gold yet, because distillation is one of the hardest stages of alchemy to get to the final product because distillation actually takes the longest. It's like, okay, we have this new child, and we have to really refine and get
Mm.
to the final product, and that takes time. And in spiritual alchemy, um, that can be looked at as like going to therapy and really and integrating and uncovering like what you've discovered about yourself in those periods of shadow work and really wanting to hone in on your new identity or what really does serve you going forward. It's really refining that craft, that new identity that wants to emerge. And then finally, we enter the stage of coagulation, which is the formation of that final product. We're now whole from an alchemical perspective. We've now received the gold. Um, if you want to look at it as like the analogy from physical alchemy, but that is really the process in a nutshell of going through the alchemical process, and it's a beautiful process, but does require a lot of work. And
Oh my God. Yeah.
about transformation and alchemy, they're like, "Oh yeah, I totally want to transform, or I totally want to go through an alchemical process," until you start it, and you're just like, "Holy shit, what did I get myself into?" You
Yeah.
know, we experience what we consider to be a death and it feels real. It literally feels like we're dying in some points of the journey because an identity that we've held on to for so long, or you speak of like these little micro transformations, even those little micro transformations throughout your journey, they involve so much powerful emotion around them, right? That we have
Yeah.
to process and witness, and it feels excruciating at times. But really, that's what's required to get to the final product, which is our gold.
Wow, that's so insane. That was so awesome. Thank you for walking us through that process. It was like I I've always used the metaphor, but to actually see how each stage really represents what's happening spiritually for us in a transformation like that was really powerful. Yeah, I want to dive into like each of these stages a little bit more just to get it really sticky for our listeners. So, you said stage 1 is kind of like that inquiry around, okay, something needs to shift in my life. And so for me, at least the first time, it was like my husband died. So I kind of was like thrown into the alchemical process. It was like, this
Mhm.
life is no longer available to you. So here you go, like off the threshold and into this like descent, kind of is the way I like to think about it too. But then I had another point in my journey where I was like at the high of my career, like everything on paper looked really great. But then I was kind of like, like I'm not really feeling all that like connected to myself. I feel kind of actually detached and like life feels pretty like
Mhm.
meaningless. And I was like apathetic. And so that was then what prompted like another round of inquiry into more of like an ego death, I would say. So,
Mhm.
what are some true signs I'd say like that you've seen in your clients, or when do people come to you to for this type of work?
Yeah, great question. So, calcination, the first stage, is really when our lives get turned upside down. It's a process of revealing illusion. And
Mm. Mm.
so we might, go about our lives and believe or think certain things, and really associate that with true reality.
Yeah.
But then calcination questions that and
Yeah.
really forces us to look at that and asks us, is that actually reality?
Yeah.
And so it forces us to really be like, oh shit, like really understand what we really need to know about our existence. And that can seem very existential, but it's a process that can be as simple as, for example, I back in 2019, I was fired from Instagram. Like I worked in tech, big tech, and I worked at both Meta and Instagram. And there was a point at which I had a horrible manager and she backstabbed me and then I got fired.
Wow.
And it was an awful process because I had really built the illusion or the thinking around, oh, this companies are, really this company is really good for me or has my best interests at heart. And I feel so safe here. And I feel like my career in corporate is just about to take off. Well, that wasn't true at all. And I really came face to face with the reality that that reality is no longer serving me.
Yeah.
And I had to really take a hard look at that. Um, and so that was my calcination stage. That
Right.
really had to take that really hard look at my life and where I'm going in my career. And that was just a catalyst. The catalyst, like within calcination, there's usually a catalyst. And my catalyst in that process was I got fired from my corporate
Yeah.
career. And so I had to really go back to the drawing board and really ask myself, what do I actually want in my life? How do I want to feel fulfilled? And that's actually how I came across plant medicine.
Yeah.
And going into my plant medicine journey, the the psychedelics, specifically psilocybin mushrooms, helped me go about the second stage of alchemy, which was deep reflection and shadow work, which was dissolution, going into the shadows and working with them and becoming more aware of not only what had kept me in the corporate world, but what more potential I actually have in a new career that was actually going to serve me better.
Yeah. So let's pause right here because I feel like there will be a catalyst that happens, right? Like your job, you getting fired, me losing my husband. Like, and I guess what the illusion that dissolved for me was that I couldn't, like, I would grow old with this person. Like I just took our future for granted. The people, young people don't die, right? So that was kind of like the
Mhm.
bubble, the illusion that was burst. And then I guess the second time where I kind of had this illusion that, oh, like if I'm making a certain amount of money, if I have a certain amount of like accolades, right? If I'm living like the dream life as what society has told me, then I should feel really happy about it. And it was that inner disconnect that started to the cracks in that illusion started to dissolve or started to
Mhm.
amplify rather. And so I really want to just name this because I think this is actually the turning point that most people miss.
Mhm.
Um, right? It's either like something bad happens, like a husband dying or you losing your job, and we end up going into victim mode,
Yeah.
or we suppress with like alcohol, drugs, sex, whatever it is to like numb the discomfort of that illusion dissolving. When I think like my work and your work is so much about like actually how do we embrace these moments as alchemical portals so that we can come into more like aligned truer forms of ourselves. So this is where like what's the invitation for you and how does for your clients at this stage in the game like and is this about using plant medicine because you've
Mhm.
told me like psilocybin is like nature's alchemist. So
Mhm.
how does psilocybin and microdosing help clients actually go into this process because it is deep and it is hard.
Yeah, that's I'll definitely get into that, but I want to go back to what
Okay.
you were saying about going into the alchemical process and how people tend to go into victim mode.
Yeah.
That specifically, I will say that most of the Earth's population does not go into the alchemical process.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
typically stop at stage one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most of us do not have the courage and the bravery to go about the change that's required to really get to that stage that really starts to fulfill us and better serves us. But we stay stuck in that first stage and we go into victim mode, and that
Mhm.
perpetuates like a cycle of continually having to stay in that calcination stage, receiving these catalysts over and over and over again, and perpetuating the victim cycle, right?
Yes, yes.
That's what happens. So in a sense, like I would say only a few, I would say a few, like only probably a smaller proportion than you think of the population actually goes about the process of alchemy
Mhm.
in a spiritual context or in a mental context.
Yeah.
And then for the second part of your question around psilocybin was I think psilocybin, microdosing, ceremonial doses of plant medicine are extremely helpful for people to when calcination happens, when those events occur, plant medicine can help assist people through the other stages of alchemy, such as
Mhm.
fusion, separation, conjunction, etc. It's kind of like its own catalyst that pushes people into the process of doing the shadow work, doing the unconscious uncovering,
Yeah.
so that way we can start to become more whole. And so for me, when I was talking about my experience with psilocybin, it really helped me reflect on my life, but also made me aware of my blind spots, of my
Mhm.
shadow, everything that I was, disillusioned
Right.
by, and what I had built my life around, which was perfectionism, trying to climb the corporate ladder, survival, because I
Mhm.
had really deep subconscious fear and belief that it was survival of the fittest. And if you did not get a good career, get a good salary, then you're not going to be successful. If you're not successful, people are going to respect you. If people don't respect you, then you're not going to receive belonging. If you don't receive belonging, then death. You know?
You've definitely done some work.
Yeah. So it's just process of uncovering these shadows and
Yeah.
these deep subconscious fears and beliefs that we have about like our existence and our and around ourselves. And that's exactly what psilocybin helps us do. Little by little, it chips away those layers so we can become more conscious and more aware of ourselves and where we're going. Um, and and what I would say is the difference between ceremonial doses and microdoses of psilocybin. Microdoses are really good for people who um, have a lot of apprehension about going into the deeper portals with
Mhm.
psilocybin off the bat. Like, for example, I have a client who, if she was thrown into a ceremonial dose of psilocybin right off the bat, she probably would have come out of it more damaged
Right.
than healed, right?
Mhm.
Because it's really important for people to take the approach of dipping their toe into the water or
Mhm.
the foot in the door technique
Yeah.
with psilocybin, and doing the small little microdoses of psilocybin can actually open someone up to getting them ready for the larger experiences or the larger doses of psilocybin that can actually help them do the deep, intense shadow work, and even get to the process of them experiencing that ego dissolution or that ego death. Because when I talk about ego death, people think like,
Yeah.
oh, you're experiencing like a death of the ego. Not necessarily. It's called ego death because it's really how I look at it is you're basically asking the ego to take a seat
Mhm. Mhm.
and stop driving the bus
Yeah.
ultimately. Because in parts work in IFS or internal family systems theory,
Mhm.
we refer to some parts of ourselves or like the ego structure as parts. And so sometimes we have certain parts of ourselves driving the bus when they don't need to be driving the bus. Our higher
Right.
self, our adult self, needs to be driving the bus, not like 13-year-old self. So when um, we're we're in those plant medicine portals, sometimes we get to the process of ego dissolution because the medicine is allowing ourselves to see what is actually been driving the bus
Mhm.
and asking that part of ourselves to really take a seat. And
Mhm.
that's really hard sometimes, where we're experiencing like losing control
Yeah.
ultimately of that identity, because that identity is like if you can just imagine that identity always feeling like, oh yeah, I'm in control, I'm driving the bus. Well, if the medicine is basically like, nope, you're not driving the bus, and kind of peels their hands away from the wheel, then it's like, oh God, oh God, oh God. Like then they start freaking out, right? Because they think that
Yeah.
they're out of control. But it's really a matter of going back to understanding what the purpose of that part or that identity was in the first place. What was it protecting? How was it
Mhm.
serving you at that time? How is it not serving you going forward? And so in a plant medicine portal, we have to really reflect and integrate a lot of these things and start to question, is this identity really serving me? And when you're going through the process of ego death, it sometimes does feel like a death because we're so
Right.
attached to that version of ourselves, even at a subconscious level. And so when that part of ourselves starts falling away, it can feel somatically like we're dying.
I really resonate with everything that you have to say. And I love talking to you because you come from you have the psychology background and it's like I can see so much of my own story, but like it all kind of makes sense, right? So in my own journey, it did feel really destabilizing. When I do feel like I went through a total ego death around my business. And when I had like the success and then it wasn't really that fulfilling. And the part of me that was driving the show, I like to call her kind of like the golden girl, the overachiever, the perfectionist, the one whose worth was built upon doing, performing, proving, right?
Mhm.
And as I was trying to step away from that or trying to tell her that she could chill and that I love her, but like conscious highest self Emily was now driving the show, it felt very destabilizing. Like I almost felt depressed, and because I when I wasn't like on screen or like in performance mode, I didn't know how to be with myself because
Mm,
my identity or my ego was so overly attached to that way of being. So is that kind of what you're talking about in this process? And how would have like psilocybin perhaps helped me in that? Because I just kind of used my awareness to remind me of the work that I was doing and tried to just be with my emotions and move through it. And I tried to access more of like the love within me, knowing that like I am someone who's highly motivated and I have a lot of energy and I want to create, but from a place of love, not from a place of lack. Right.
yeah, and that's exactly what psilocybin helps us do, right? It like helps us find that inner self-worth,
Hmm.
that like ultimately helps us find self-love for ourselves. We don't need to perform. We don't need to, seek anything externally to feel fulfilled. We just have to be in a state of being. And when we accept that, you know, bringing our authentic selves like unfiltered is like that's the part of ourselves that's connected to our soul, our deeper purpose, right?
Hmm.
That's the part that psilocybin is allowing us to see, because all the other stuff that's around that like is a lot of pre-programming, thinking that
Yeah.
we have to do things externally, or thinking we have to like perform or get validation. Like that's very common amongst like, recovering perfectionists, right?
Absolutely.
Is perfectionism is a form of needing to feel
Mhm.
validated for the
Mhm.
things that we're doing. And that's again trying to do things for other people. And that could lead to people pleasing and like all of that stuff, which I'm like a recovering people
Yeah.
pleaser. And so it, it's basically a process that allows us to become more aware of those parts of ourselves, the programs that we've been kind of that have latched on to ourselves that prevent us from feeling that sense of sovereignty, that sense of self love that we have within ourselves that we just have to bring to the table. And psilocybin, what's beautiful is not only that it helps us like peel back those layers of all that pre programming, but it can actually show us how we can bring forward that true authentic version of
Right.
ourselves.
So I love that, and I guess the other piece I wanted to share is that, like, I have a name for my ego and a name for my soul. And my because it's helped me kind of, like, parse out, like, I can then tell, like, who's in charge, and my ego's name is Brittany, like, it's Brittany bitch. She's like, "You better work, bitch." And I have, like, that whole, like,
Yeah.
my soul is, like, Grace Rose, and she's just, like, really soft and nurturing and lovely, but, I wanna hear, like, when people come to you and they're like, "I wanna work with you, Eric," or they're interested in your work, like, what would you say is on the other side of these deep transformations? Because I think it's easy when you're in the spiritual world to be like, "Oh, it's like you're awake to all of your programming, you're in your truth, you're in your power, you're in your sovereignty," but, like, how do you make that sticky for someone? Because I believe so much in this work. I
Mhm,
believe like, after, like, you wake up to the ways that we've been indoctrinated by, capitalism, patriarchy, colonialism, like, all the ways that we are running on these subconscious programs, it's like, I can't go back, and I honestly feel like it's, like, the root of all of our problems is
mhm,
that people aren't, like, awake. So, how do we get more people to do this work?
mhm. Great
In a
question. Well,
way that they're consciously aware of, you know?
I do wanna kind of play on some words that you were mentioning. We're running on programs. So we're running, we're rushing, we're in a state of anxiety.
Yes. Yes.
And so that is usually what people want out of. They're like, I don't want to feel this level of hurry, this level of anxiety anymore. I just want to feel like they can't even sometimes describe what they want because I don't want to feel anxiety anymore.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, what do you want to feel? You know? And usually it's a state of calm, a state of coming home to oneself, a state of feeling like you can just exist
Mm,
and feel peace in your body and feel the groundedness of the earth beneath you. And there's a certain level of peace and harmony that I don't think many people are familiar with.
yeah.
And because they're so in the matrix, as I call it. They're always running the program, right? And so how can we begin just stopping, stay and and that's why meditation I think is so beautiful and so helpful for so many people because it really allows us to just drop into our body and just allow the thoughts to finally, you know, exist and not attach to them, but just go inward and feel that groundedness and that centeredness in our bodies. And I think that's such medicine for so many people. But it's really a matter of the transformation, really is feeling that sense of serenity
Mhm.
within oneself uh,
Mhm.
and feeling like we came here for a reason and you know what that reason is once you know yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like a reason in terms of, like, divine existence, like the trees and the
Mhm,
flowers and the bees, and it's not driven by what we think we need to or should do in order to feel enough, right? It's just something so innate. But I wonder, sometimes I'm like, I just feel like Donald Trump and his whole administration just needs a hero's dose of mushrooms and everything would be okay. But, like, how like do you I honestly do feel like if people were all, like, conscious and awake, then a lot of our problems would be solved. Do you think there is any coming back for some people once their ego is so just, like, attached to
mhm,
this pattern of proving or that, like, the a metric of success or power or like, I'm looking at, like, the
mhm.
real, like, shadow ego, like, is there any coming back?
I mean, that's a great question. I personally don't have like a good answer for you because I think from the perspective of psychology, we typically refer to those really you said like toxic, ego driven people. Um, some of those are narcissistic people. Like we refer to that as like NPD or narcissistic personality disorder.
Yeah.
And typically for narcissists or narcissistic personality disorder, they it's very, very hard, even from a clinical perspective,
Yeah.
to create any sort of change within their system. It could be the way that they're biologically wired,
Mhm.
the way that they might have had like a biological predisposition to it based on their family lineage. But then also were exposed to an environment where they experienced that level of shame trauma that
Mhm.
caused a lot of that narcissism to unfold. And once people are kind of stuck in those ways, such as maybe our president, then it's very hard to come back unless something really catastrophic happens in their life that really forces them to look inward. But even still, a lot of narcissists find it difficult to even look at that part of themselves.
Yeah. 'Cause yeah, thank you for explaining that, and I also just see, because it's not just, and I know we're kind of veering into the collective, but my one of the inquiries that I have been in is like, well, how does this work? How does my work in terms of helping people with deep transformational change serve the collective? And I truly believe that if everyone healed and lived from a place of wholeness and from love, then we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in. Because I also look at, like, it's not just our president, it's also all of the people that are defending him. And I see all of them as like their egos attached to, like, it's like you were talking about, like that scarcity mindset of like, I need my business, I need my position in the cabinet. I need this in order to exist. So, yeah, I guess I kind of want to hear a little bit more about, like, how do these it's almost like when our ego feels under a threat, it is like almost a threat to our existence. Like, and how do you
Mhm.
snap people out of that?
Yeah, it's very hard unless people are really committed to doing some deep level healing work. It's very hard to snap them out of it. In fact, a lot of those people who are driven by ego, they're driven by fear a lot of
Right.
times because it's like you know they have this belief that it's like survival of the fittest, and
Right.
if you're not achieving, if you're not striving, if you're not like protecting the system, then you're going to get ejected from the
Yes.
system and result in death. So it's
Exactly.
really a deep, we're wired from an evolutionary perspective, we're wired for survival.
Uh-huh.
Survival and reproduction, according to evolutionary theory.
Mhm.
And so that served us, right, when we were traversing the plains of the savannah and Africa and really starting to get a foothold within our world as a human species. That served us at one time, right? But
Yeah.
now, because we are very much ad, like an advanced or more advanced civilization on Earth, and we have technology, we're living like in a society with rules and laws and structure. We don't have to rely on survival of the fittest in that paradigm anymore. We can really start to think differently about
Mhm.
how we want to live and how we want to heal ourselves. And we don't have to err or be tempted into the realm of thinking that we have to survive anymore.
Mhm.
It's more about how can we cooperate? How can we show love to our community members instead of feeling like they're competition or feeling like they're out to get us or all of these really biologically, evolutionarily these mechanisms like that were created by evolution that kept us safe and protected us like
Yeah.
in the situations like in the ancient times, but now we don't really need to rely on those anymore. We can really start to evolve our species into a more cooperative communal space.
Right, and that's what they're talking about with, like, the new earth, right? Is that we're kind of at this, like is that just the idea that we're at this tipping point in consciousness where more people are starting to I think of it as, like, lights on and leading with
Mhm.
love and, like, starting to see that, like, as we all collectively gain consciousness, we can start to see how those survival mechanisms are that once served us as protection are now, like, persecuting us in a way, right? As individually and just as a species. But is that kind of where we're headed, hopefully?
Yeah, yeah, hopefully. I mean, hopefully into this new paradigm and this new earth, we're going to see a lot more people coming together if we really want to survive and thrive,
Mhm.
as species,
Yeah.
and get to the point at which we are an advanced civilization, like
Yeah.
the potentially the extraterrestrials that are like above us. We have to really start to come out of this old paradigm that we're
Yeah.
living in, right? Um, but that doesn't mean because I think a lot of also people who are spiritual think that we only should feel love, like we can't feel any other emotion, but that kind of strips us from our human experience as well. So there has to be a balance, right? It's perfectly acceptable for us to feel the emotions of fear and anger and like
Yeah.
the emotions that people tend to avoid or bypass or not feel. But it's really important that we allow ourselves to still like preserve our humanity by feeling these emotions and not bypassing them, but still striving for that ultimate kind of state of union or love with one another.
Ugh, I love that so much. You are such a bridge. I totally feel that because, yeah, I think once you learn about like consciousness and just how like your mind really does have the capacity to rewrite a narrative on anything that happens in your life. Like I remember reading somewhere that like the facts of the story say that no, the facts of the event stay the same, but the story changes. Like you get to
Mm,
rewrite it however you want. But yeah, in order for true alchemy to occur, like you have to go through the emotions, the hard emotions, the human
Mhm.
emotions, the egos, attachments, and feeling the grief of all of that as well, in order to I'd say to really turn that lead into gold. Otherwise, you're just painting like a shiny veneer on top of like
Mhm.
some nasty rusted pole. Metal pole.
I mean, I go back to the quote, "In order to heal, you have to feel."
Feel. Yeah. Mhm. You have
And
to.
once I got that, I was just like, "Oh my god, it's so simple." But yeah, it's true. Like, we're going through the entire alchemical process, being human, we're going to feel the entire spectrum of emotion. We're going to have to feel and go through the grief, the anger, the sadness, like, the despair, like, all of the things that we
Yeah.
tend to avoid as humans, right? We really have to go through them so that way they're not so much hiding in our subconscious, affecting our behavior and affecting, the way that we think about things and believe things without
Yeah.
questioning. We have to really feel them and experience them to release them. And
Totally.
that's true, spiritual alchemy.
And would you like the ego's function is like to it's like I am, right? It's like a mechanism for us to understand ourselves as the humans that we are. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a doctor. I'm just like this is me like taking my own knowledge, right? But it's like we need that to experience ourselves. Cause I had a moment in my spiritual journey where I was like, okay, if I'm just like a soul in a human body, like I don't know, it just felt like I was like, what's the whole point of even being human? Like, if the whole point is to just like bypass this experience in a way. And so I feel like it's not so much about like one or the other, it really is about both. And
Mhm.
so when you say like ego death, it's not just like shutting the ego out, but it really is just like checking it, like in
Mhm.
balance, in harmony with like our soul.
Yeah, exactly. So there has to be that balance involved where we're not killing the ego,
Right.
where it's not a true what we say ego death. It feels like a death because
Yeah.
we're releasing its grip on, our entire like conscious being and our like
Mhm.
overall awareness, right?
Yeah.
But we're just simply like letting go of its grip, which feels scary at first, right? If you and then like all the emotions come up with it, but that's the whole part of the process. That's the entire
Yeah.
point of the process to relinquish the control of our ego to understand how we're connected with everything else, right?
Oh, yeah, that's it, and I mean, I've done my own, psilocybin journeys where I've just felt that so much, and I really do think the secret sauce is in the holding of the both, of in
Mm,
seeing your life, from both the, like, personal, individual, myopic perspective that, like, we get to, like, hug our kids or kiss a lover or whatever it is, but then to also see, like, the mythic storyline, which
mhm,
of the soul perspective, and I think when you can hold both, it's like you see these hard chapters as initiations, as portals, like,
mhm.
to more truth, to our evolution. It's so cool. Um
I kind of relate it to the analogy of a sunset. You have the light, but you have the dark, right?
Mhm.
And what makes a sunset so beautiful, it's the mergence
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
those 2 things, right? It's like what makes all of the pretty colors and the bands of light around that experience, and it's the mergence of, like, the shadow and the light coming together,
Yeah.
right? And
Well,
that's,
and that
what makes it beautiful.
I feel like that's where we should get into your divine union 'cause, alchemical love, right? Like, right? Like, how the I think that's part of the alchemy too. It's like we live with it's like 2 becoming 1. So I don't know if you wanna talk a little bit more about your retreat, and then I have one more question that I ask every guest,
Mhm.
on the show.
Yeah. Yeah, so what Emily's referring to here is my, retreat that I'm leading in Egypt at the end of this year, December of 2026, and I'm leading it with my partner in crime, my also romantic partner, and so like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, as I've been to Egypt twice now, both on retreats, and I really felt called to lead a retreat this time in Egypt, but around the concept of love and how we can really lean into the alchemical process when calling in that divine union or that divine love, because there's wisdom woven throughout the ancient Egyptian world, specifically referring to the story of Isis and Osiris and how their love was very alchemical in nature. It wasn't necessarily just romantic love; it was a love they had to really both go to the depths, to the shadows, to really preserve what they had. And Isis really had to, like, the entire story is Osiris was betrayed, cut into like 14 different pieces and scattered around Egypt. And Isis had to go on what seemed like a hopeless quest to find and put together her love. And so she had to experience the range of different emotions to get there. And so she, in a sense, had to go through the alchemical process to merge Osiris back together, and then they had to continue that alchemical process by resurrecting her love, allowing Horus, their son, to be born to defeat Set. And
Mm,
so it's basically, if you dive deep into that story, there's such richness in understanding how love is alchemical, how divine love specifically is alchemical. And so with this retreat, we're going to the different really hotspot sites within Egypt along the Nile that allow us to really dig in to not only the ancient history and the myth around that story, but to receive the frequencies and the codes and the energy from each one of those hotspots in Egypt, beginning with the Isis temple in Aswan, going up the Nile River to the temple of Edfu, which is Horus, then going to Dendera, which is Hathor, then going to Karnak and Luxor, and finally making our way all the way to the Great Pyramid and allowing ourselves to be in the King's Chamber, we'll be doing a private sound ceremony within that pyramid to resonate with the frequency provided by that megalithic structure, which provides such transformation after the journey. And what's really fascinating, going back to the concept of alchemical love, is from my first journey through the Nile River, I was able to really understand and see within myself how I'm transforming and how I'm changing. And I'm able to align my energetic frequency to the energetic frequency of Ryan, my partner, who I called in literally 2 months later. And we've been on this magical journey with one another, helping each other uncover each other's blind spots and shadows and how we can relate to one another in like a conscious love partnership. And I think it's been one of the most magical experiences of my life. And that's why I was inspired to create a retreat like this to help people, go not only like traverse like the Nile and see all the ancient sites, but really receive the wisdom and the frequencies of each one of these sites.
mm, it's gonna be so epic. I wanna go again with
Yes,
the
me
intention. I
too.
know. Yes. So, friends, we will link more information about Eric and his partner's retreat in the show notes. My followers also get $1,000 off if you use my
Mhm.
affiliate code. So definitely jump on that. That's before July. And Eric, I have one more question for you that I like to ask everyone else or anyone who comes on my show, which is, if you were to just like drop in for a moment and, imagine yourself on your deathbed and you're looking back kind of on your life, like what would make you feel like you really did it? Like what is making the most of life to you?
I know the immediate answer: how I related to other people in my life.
Yeah.
Like what I what relationships I built with them and how I was able to love them in the best way possible.
Mm,
Because I think like the what how I view life is all about our relationships and our love with one another. And that's really what makes this life really special, in my opinion, is how we can start cultivating that love and that community with each other. And
mhm.
being on my deathbed, I would definitely reflect back on each of the significant relationships that I had in my life.
Mm, yes, I love that so much, like, it all just comes back to love. It's like
Mhm.
the one truth. It makes me wanna cry. Oh, well, thank you so much. I could riff on this topic with you all day, and do you wanna just share any more information about how people can connect with you after the show?
Sure. So, again, like am a plant medicine integration coach and microdosing facilitator, like I mentioned earlier in the show. And if you're curious about plant medicine or psychedelics, or just want to learn more about it, I do a lot of education on that topic, and also coaching work on the integration process. If you're brave enough to go into the depths with plant medicine, or just simply microdose with plant medicine and wanting to know more about that, you can find me at my site, Dr. Eric Russell, DrEricRussell.com. And of course, that'll be in the show notes, I'm assuming. And you can find me there. You can book some time with me, and we can discuss how plant medicine can best serve you. I also do a lot of intuitive readings and coaching, just general coaching alongside that. So, if you are interested in anything around alchemy or anything that we talked about today, I'd love to meet with you if you want to reach out.
I love it. Thank you so much, Eric, and thank you everyone for tuning in, and we hope to see you on another episode soon.